Hi, I'm Jamie Beth Cohen, and yesterday I had a really great talk with some authors about spreadsheets, but because I'm Jamie Beth Cohen, I forgot to record it. Just a fun thing I like to do. So I'm going to do the chat over again with just myself, but using some of the questions that came up in yesterday's chat, and I hope you enjoy it. So first I'm going to share my screen. I think I'm going to share my screen. Great. And so you are now seeing my spreadsheet presentation. I'm going to go into slideshow mode. And presumably you will be able to see my slideshow shortly. There we go. So Jamie Beth Cohen loves spreadsheets, and this talk originally took place on Wednesday, June 7th. I'm now recording another talk on Thursday, June 8th. So who am I? I am a writer. I write fiction and nonfiction, occasionally poetry. I have 2 novels out, and I am under contract to write my memoir. I'm also the primary earner in my family. I have a day job as a program and project management person, and I'm entirely self-taught. So I did study writing as an undergraduate, but I do not have an MFA, nor am I a certified project manager, even though that's what I do 40 hours a week. So all of that is to say, what I do using spreadsheets, and what I do may work for you. It also may not work for you, and that's okay too. I think spreadsheets can be any number of things to any number of people, and my message with spreadsheets is always make it as simple as possible to do what you need it to do. I'm not a fan of CRMs. I'm not a fan of big, flashy databases, because inevitably I have to find workarounds to do what I need the spreadsheet to do. So I'm just going to show you how I do some things on spreadsheets, and maybe that'll work for you, and maybe it won't, and that's okay. I'm also happy to do follow-up chats with people individually. So why spreadsheets? Because they're amazing, and because really they're how my brain works. I couldn't do the things that I do in my life without spreadsheets. I know this isn't true for everyone, and if it's not true for you, that's okay. Stick around, listen to what I'm about to say, take what works for you, and leave the rest behind. We had some great people on the call with me yesterday who shared some great tips, and I'll try to include those as we go through. So spreadsheets are just how my brain works. I use spreadsheets for everything. I have a list of things to do that I use both at work and for my home life. It's sortable, it's color coded, it really controls my life, and I love it. I I have a spreadsheet full of things I want to watch or things that I've watched. So I share that spreadsheet with my husband, and then I can add things as things come across my feed. Like a couple weeks ago, everybody was talking about the show Beef. And I was like, I don't even know what that show is. What's everyone talking about? And I just added it to the spreadsheet. And then when we finished Succession, we went to the spreadsheet and we looked at what was there and we picked Beef. And we can also note in there, like, for example, sometimes we watch shows separately. And so I'll say something like, oh, we should totally watch this show. And my husband will be like, sorry, I watched it without you. And so now we put that into the document. That may seem silly to people who don't like spreadsheets. For us, it works really, really well. I also keep track of my cycle and my mood on a spreadsheet. I know there are apps that do it. I know I could download them and put all my information in there. That made me a little nervous, number one. And number two, the idea of having my phone like give me a notification, like, careful, you might be grumpy tomorrow. That didn't work for me. That's not who I am. I don't want a device telling me what my mood might look like. But I now have a spreadsheet going back to 2018 that's formatted exactly how I want it, that tracks exactly what I want to track. And visually, I started to see patterns. It's actually how I diagnosed my cyclical migraines, and it's made them so much easier to treat because now I know when they're coming. And of course, I use spreadsheets for everything in my writing life. So my first novel came out in 2019. I queried it 2 different times over the course of 2 different years, 50 agents each year. And I have a spreadsheet that tracks all that. So people I wanted to query, why I wanted to query them. Once I queried them, was it just a query letter, or was it a query letter in the first 10 pages or the first chapter or the first 50 pages? And the thing that I think is so neat about spreadsheets, depending on how you set them up, is they're to-do lists in some cases, but they also will help you discover patterns. And so for someone who is getting a lot of requests for pages after a query letter, but then isn't moving past the next phase, may have a stunning query letter, but the pages might not be where they need to be. Or if you're finding, oh, everybody who asks for the first 50 pages asks for more, but people who just see the query letter don't get in touch with me, then that might mean you need to really work on your query letter and then your pages are solid. So I like how spreadsheets, depending on how you set them up and use them, can start as to-do lists and task lists, but can become data that you can actually use to really nail your queries, right? The freelance submission spreadsheet is the one that we're going to look at pretty in depth today. I also recently started looking into residencies and fellowships. Now that I'm under contract and have a deadline for my memoir, I'm looking to apply to more residencies and fellowships. And really the way the idea for this whole talk started was I was taking these lists that I was finding on lots of different websites and combining them into a spreadsheet. And I thought to myself, why hasn't anyone done this already? And then I thought, wait a minute, I am doing it and I can share it with other people so they don't have to do it. So we'll look at that spreadsheet as well. And then I always love to tell the story of my friend Michelle, who plots whole novels on spreadsheets. And it is an amazing system. She's an amazing mentor. And it doesn't work for me. And I mention that because not all spreadsheets will work for everyone, but she had me plot an entire novel with motivations and plot and characters and this great spreadsheet. She would not let me start writing until she approved my spreadsheet. It was an amazing system. Once we were done, I had no desire to write the novel. That's just not how my brain works. When I'm writing a novel, I like to really let the characters explore where they're going and where the story's going. Now, for me, that often means that I throw out 40,000 words. Actually, every book I've ever written, I've thrown out 40,000 words, which is essentially what other people might call pre-writing. And had I stuck to the spreadsheet, I would probably create a novel much more quickly than I am used to creating a novel. However, it wouldn't be enjoyable for me. And I do have a day job. Writing is secondary to me in earnings, for sure, not in my heart. But what that means is that I really want to enjoy what I'm doing. Now, the good thing is, if I ever got like a 2-book deal, I could write that novel if I needed to, and I could write it very quickly. Whenever I sit down and open up that spreadsheet, as I do every once in a while, I think, oh yeah, these characters are great. That plot is great. These motivations are awesome. But it's not fun for me. But if I had to write a novel quickly, that's how I would do it. So let's move on. Oh, we're not to Q&A yet. We are going to look at my sample spreadsheet. So this is an Excel spreadsheet. I created it as a sample, so everything is fake. These email addresses are fake. These publications are not fake. These titles, to a certain extent, are fake. So don't get hung up on that. I just wanted to have some data that we could look at and manipulate. So you'll see my columns. Year is the year in which the piece got added to this sheet. So this is like a 2023 sheet. I have sheets going all the way back probably to 2018. And sometimes something doesn't get published and I'm still pitching it a year later. So this just tells me, when did this idea start? The item number, again, is a chronological marker and it stays with the piece. So you'll see if I use this arrow to sort by number 1, you'll see that number 1 is I love Goodreads and I refuse to set a Goodreads goal. Every time I add a line that deals with this essay, I'm going to keep this same number. Okay. Content, it's sort of a headline, but obviously we all know headlines get changed when pieces get picked up, but it's for me to know what this piece is about. This tells me the outlet that I'm pitching or want to pitch. This tells me what kind of outlet it is. This was important to me in the beginning when I was really trying to sort out what I was doing. It's less important to me now, but if you want to use this column, you know, if something's online only, if it's a glossy, if it's a daily. This tells me when I pitched someone and when I heard back, but it also tells me if I had to follow up. So for example, you'll see if we go back to sorting by pitch date, you'll see that the Goodreads piece, again, this is fake. Let's say I pitched it to LitHub on January 10th. I followed up with them on January 15th. When I heard back from them on January 15th, they passed. We'll get into this column in a minute. And then when they passed on January 15th, I went right ahead, created a new line for this item. I pitched it to Electric Lit. I didn't even have to follow up because the next day they got back to me, and now you'll see it says pubbed. Again, this is fake, but looking at the status column, the status is always going to be one of these items. So it would go from I was pitching, right? So I got an idea. An idea is just like, oh, for Thanksgiving in November, I should probably write something about doing a dairy-free Thanksgiving. I don't need to write it right now because I'm not pitching it right now, but it's just, I don't want to lose track of it. Then if I get to like, oh, October, and I haven't written that piece yet, I would move it into the to write category. Maybe I'm writing it, I've sent it to a couple partners to look at, give me edits on. Then it's like, okay, I'm ready to pitch this. Here I am pitching it. Here it's been pitched. Then if it gets accepted, then it'll be in edits. Then final is like, I've done everything I'm supposed to do. Now I'm just waiting for the editor to go ahead and hit publish, and then we get to pubbed. So here, this Goodreads goal piece at Electric Lit is currently listed as pubbed, but it would have gone through all of those phases. It doesn't have to go through every single one. I once worked on a database, a CRM. I used to work at admissions and financial aid, where every applicant had to go through every phase. So they were they were a contact, then they were an inquiry, then they were an applicant, then they were reviewed. And what I didn't like about that database is sometimes, rarely, but sometimes a person would walk into my office with a complete application. Well, they started at the applicant phase, but the database made me put in first they were a contact, then they were an inquiry, then they were an application. So that's not how I set this up. For me, the numbers just help me easily sort what I need to pay attention to. So if I sort by this J status column, you'll see, okay, I have 2 pub pieces. I have a piece that's accepted. I have some pieces that I pitched and some pieces that I'm waiting to pitch, right? So that's what that is. This column wasn't here yesterday. During the call, someone asked, you know, I have a really hard time when I've been given edits by an editor, remembering to actually do the edits by the date they've assigned me. I write personal essays. People who write reported pieces often go back and forth through many more edits. So the edit due by is a column I added for someone who was on the call yesterday. And if that's the kind of work you do, then you're going to want that kind of column. Status, we talked about a little bit already. We'll come back to it. And then this is where I keep track of editor name, editor email, the website, and then some notes. So like, for example, again, fake notes, Jen McKee has worked with them, or I found this in a binder. For those of you who don't know, binders are groups on Facebook for women and gender nonconforming writers. And that's where I have found a lot of my contacts over the years. So again, I've just talked a lot. I know we can't really pause for questions because no one's actually on this call, but I do want to talk about this a little bit. These are the stages that work for my brain and that have worked for my workflow. That doesn't mean those are the stages that you need, but they are there to be helpful. They are how I look at the freelance pieces I write. I'm completely self-taught. This is what works for me. Something else might work for you. Additionally, someone on the call yesterday asked what the difference between filter and sort is in an Excel sheet. So for those of you who don't know Excel at all, I highly recommend Googling a YouTube tutorial. The thing about Excel is it can do a ton of stuff, and most people use it for numbers. I use it for words and a little bit of numbers for sortings and dates and things like that. But it doesn't have to feel scary. So I did encourage people to go ahead and Google a YouTube tutorial. The other thing I highly recommend, and this is the way that I learned to use Excel, was create an Excel spreadsheet for something that matters to you, but isn't crucial or important. And so I use the idea of groceries, right? My mom used to do a grocery list on a piece of paper that was ordered by the grocery store area. Really smart. For me, I can put grocery lists in an Excel spreadsheet. I can put then a column of what area of the store it is in. I can put like, I can never remember whether I like hard salami or Genoa salami. So if I just write salami on a list, that doesn't help me. So I can put notes in there. So I recommend doing that with data that's going to make sense to your head. So it's not like, what color M&Ms are, oh, my friend, I should actually mention this. My friend did a project once where she had a really boring job, and every day at 3 o'clock, she got a pack of M&Ms from the vending machine. And then she would graph in an Excel spreadsheet how many colors were in each bag. And she had that going for the entire time she worked at her job, just because she wanted to and because it was fun. So I would say pick some data that's interesting or fun to you. It could be birth dates in your family. I do some vacation planning on it. Someone mentioned on the call yesterday that when they had to look at assisted living homes for their parent, they made a sheet, it would have the name, it would have the location, it would have the contact person, the phone number, and then any of the features that they wanted. So just create a sheet and play around with it. For me, that was the best way to get to know what Excel could and couldn't do. There are a ton of things that Excel can do that I never use. That's fine. You're using it. It's a tool. You're using it the way you want to use it. So we were talking about sort and filter. So when you filter, generally, mostly, not always, you filter the top row, and then you'll get these little arrows, and that'll let you, with one click, sort any column. So for example, I use it most often in this spreadsheet with my status. So the pub pieces I don't even have to worry about. The accepted piece, that's something I would follow up on if I hadn't heard from someone in a while. Pieces that I pitched, pieces that I'm going to pitch. But someone said, I'm really not good at keeping track of when I last pitched an editor. So in this way, you can sort by editor name, and you can see, oh, here are all the pieces I pitched to this editor, right? They're all going to come up together. That got a big gasp from the crowd because they were like, wait, you never delete anything off this spreadsheet? And I don't. I also don't delete emails ever. Again, it's how it works for me. It may not be how it works for you. Generally, once something is pubbed, I'll gray it out so that I know I'm not paying attention to it anymore. But in general, I don't delete anything. And this is one of the reasons why. It's going to give me historical data. So that's filtering, right? You just, you can sort quickly. You can actually say, show me only things that have 2023, right? It's like, oh, you don't have anything that says 2023 in it. That's fine. You're going to select all. I could do this. I could say, show me only the dailies. So I'm going to unselect, select the daily, and then I'm going to see, okay, the only dailies I have on here are New York Times and Washington Post, right? So filter is great for things like that. Sort, what we would do for sort is we would select the whole document by clicking on this corner, and then you do data, sort, and then it's going to say, give me, you can click, my list has header rows, and you can say, I want this first thing to be my pitch date, and I want this second thing to be the type of outlet. And then this is going to give me my pitches in chronological order, and then by outlet. These ones that don't have dates are not going to come up in the sort. It's just something to know about Excel. That's how it works. I can sort this by, or I can filter this by alphabetical order. Not super useful, although if you are using this timely hook, that'll pull everything that's timely into one place that you can look at. So this is basically how I use the document that I'm going to use. It is a snapshot in time. And what that means is if I look at it today, it's going to look different than if I look at it tomorrow. And I can show you an example of that. So this one I have why my kids get to choose their own bedtime. And let's say I pitched Beller and the pitch date was May 15th. And on May 30th, I got a response and it was accepted. Okay, well, now we're into June. Let's say I touch base with Amy and I say, hey, what's going on with this piece? She says, you know what, it's really clean. We just made some grammatical changes. Will you go ahead and look over it and make sure it looks okay to you? I go ahead and do that. So then this is going to turn into final for me, because that means I've signed off on it. Amy's told me she signed off on it. And whenever she's ready to publish it, she'll hit publish. So this is just something that is a snapshot in time. And what it allows me to do is open up the document every day and look at what I need to pay attention to. And sometimes I'll color code it. I'll say, you know what, tomorrow, when I have time to look at this document, I'm only going to focus on the pieces that I've already pitched and haven't heard back on. So before I shut the document down today, I'm going to call these red, close the document. When I come back at lunchtime tomorrow, because I sometimes pitch during my lunch break from my day job, then I know, okay, focus on these right now. These are the ones that need your attention. Another thing to keep in mind with to pitch, this is one that's really important to me. So you'll see I have what to do when the autopsy is inconclusive. And the chronology here is I pitched it to the New York Times on April 21st. I followed up with them on May 10th and May 20th. I didn't hear back from them, but I also didn't get a pass from them. So I went ahead and I pitched to the Forward. I think I changed the story. Let's see, pass. So let's make this a pass. Hold on. Okay. So I never really closed out this pitch with the New York Times, because if I don't place it elsewhere and they come back to me, awesome. But let's say here I pitched on May 1st. I followed up on May 15th. I got a response on May 20th that they're not interested. So on May 30th, I took that same piece and I went to the Washington Post. I haven't heard back from them. On deck, places I know I want to pitch are the Girlfriend and the Forward. So they're listed here as to pitch. And sometimes I'll even do like to pitch, waiting on, what am I waiting on right now? WAPO. So that's how I use that column. You'll see down here, I have other tabs. This outlet tabs is just a running alphabetically sorted list of places I might want to pitch sometimes. It's really just like having a piece of paper with scribbles on it. I don't link this to anything. I don't really take notes here. I work with an incarcerated writer who's incarcerated in Washington State. So this is his outlet list actually that I'm using for this sample. But every time he hears of a new outlet that's publishing incarcerated writers or anyone writing about social justice, we'll just add it to this list. What's great about this for me is I can just copy and paste and send it to him through the prison mail, which doesn't allow for attachments or anything formatted, which is why this sheet is simple, 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 simple. So each sheet is different depending on what I need. This would be my pub tab. Again, this is all fake, pretend. I'm going to keep this item number that ties to my pitching log. So you'll see I have, the item number here is always going to be the same item number here. Because of that, I could link these sheets and get them to talk to each other. It's just not that important to me. I like to have my hands on the data. I like to know, it helps me check in with like what needs to be done on any given day. I find for me that once spreadsheets get too automated, I feel too disconnected from the actual work. Again, that's just me. You may love linking things, and I know lots of people who are great at it and swear by it. The pub number is, again, a chronological record of what got published. So here's pub 1, here's pub 2. Again, once this becomes a multi-year sheet, you're going to want to have a year in here, even though you have a date. It's helpful for other kinds of sorting. But you don't need it because you do have the date. But so this is my first pub of 2023. This is my second pub of 2023. You'll see that I started working on the Goodreads one before I was doing the honeymoon during hurricane season 1, but they got picked up in a different order. Totally fine. For me, that's really useful information to have. This is the date that they got published. This is the title. Again, this is going to be different than what's on the pitching log usually because editors often change titles. So that's another reason things aren't necessarily linked up is they're not necessarily the same. But I do have that control number to help with that. Then pretend there's a link here. This is going to be the fee. This is going to be when I invoiced and when the invoice was paid. And you'll see there's a TK, and I usually color code TKs as red so that I know that I haven't been paid yet. So that's really it for that tracker. And I will send a sample tracker, the boiler, out to everybody who signed up for this call. I'm going to close out of that right now and save it. Again, I'm sorry, there's not time for people to ask questions because there are no people on this call with me. I will say, oops, sorry, that one of the things that came up yesterday was the difference between Excel, Google Sheets, or something far more even useful or overblown than that. And what I will say is I only use Google Sheets if I'm planning to share. The functionality is much better in Excel. For simple sheets, really doesn't matter. I just really prefer my local app to my computer, the Excel document. However, Google Sheets, they get better over time and the functionality has gotten better, but sharing is a really big deal, right, with Google Sheets. And so I'm going to show you the residency and fellowship sheet. What happened was my friend Erica Meitner, who's an amazing poet and teaches in MFA programs, was the creator of this post-MFA resources Tumblr. Now, she did it for her MFA students who are graduating, but honestly, it is useful for anyone, whether or not they have an MFA, and it's divided. You'll see there are residencies, fellowships, international opportunities, academic jobs, other jobs. And when I told her that I was doing this talk and said, is it okay if I talk about how I used your Tumblr? She said, yeah, that's fine, but please let everyone know I haven't had time to update it recently, and there are other places that I go when I'm looking for residencies. But initially, a couple of weeks ago, I looked at this document and I was like, great, I want to look at residencies. So I clicked on the residency tab and I was like, wow, this is a lot of information and it's not in a useful format for me. That is not a knock on Erica at all. It is, my brain works like a spreadsheet. So I actually took some time while I was watching TV with my family, and I translated what she had there into a spreadsheet that I plan to share with other writers. It's not ready yet. You're looking at it. It's a little messy. It works for me. It may not work for you, but I will be sharing it once I feel like it's in a better place. And so what I've done here is, here are the types. Is it a residency? Is it a writer's conference? Is it a fellowship or grant? Here's an additional resource list. Now, this is Erica's Tumblr, but also the other resources that she recommended that are kept more up to date. Here are non-group residencies, national park artists and residents, writers' conferences. Here's a whole group for resources for caregivers and parents. So basically, I took her pages and I made them types or categories that I can sort by. This is the name, where I found it. So I want to give Erica credit where credit is due, but also, like, for example, Prospect Street Writers House, just a friend was posting on Facebook from the Prospect Street Writers House. And I thought, oh, what is that? Oh, it's a residency. Oh, should I apply for that? So I just added it, like I'm the source for that because it came across my feed and I created it. Here are the links. If I know if there's a cost or if it's free, if I know the place that's listed. Deadlines, we're going to come back to that in a minute, and then July, and then these are additional deadline columns. So here's what happened. Spreadsheets need very concise data to do their sorting. Some of these residencies and fellowships don't have concise deadlines. So what I did was I wrote down everything I knew, and then I made myself a new column that said June, July, August, September through December, or January through May. And I decided right now I want to focus on the June, July, August ones. So I just pulled them up here. I made them yellow. It's a directive to me, like these are the ones that have deadlines coming up. These are the ones that have September through December deadlines. These are the ones that have January through May deadlines. And these are the ones that I'm focused on right now. There are other ones here that either I looked at and maybe they're defunct and they're still on Erica's list, but they don't actually exist anymore. Or maybe there was another reason that I wasn't interested in. It's possible that some of them, these are like, so like the Jack Kerouac, 4 residencies a year to writers of any stripe or age living anywhere in the world. Each residency consists of approximately a 3-month stay. I can't do a 3-month stay. I have a day job. I have kids. I have a family. So I didn't go through, excuse me, air quality is horrible here right now. I didn't go through and do all of these data points for them because I knew I wasn't interested. But as I build this out, either I will do that or someone else will do that. I mean, I think that's what's great about sharing the work like this. So the colors are just for because I'm a visual person, it's just helping me figure out where I need to focus my energy. And I made a cardinal mistake on this spreadsheet. It wasn't a mistake, it was a choice, but I almost never do this. This is technically not a functional spreadsheet. Anytime you have blank lines, you're going to lose functionality with sorting and filtering. I don't think spreadsheets have to be pretty. I do think they should be functional. This one, for what I need it for, I just needed to be able to draw my eyes to certain things. And so this worked better for me. It was a choice I made. It may be a choice I change later on. Ooh, that was a lot of talking. So I think that's mostly everything we covered on the call yesterday. Again, apologies to those of you there. I did not record it, but now we all have this lovely version of the piece. I will also tell you that during COVID, I did a series of podcast episodes where I interviewed people, friends of mine, who use spreadsheets for all sorts of things. So if you're just interested in like, Jamie, I'm not sold on this whole spreadsheet idea. It's not going to be useful in my life. First of all, I think it's useful for all writers, but if your brain doesn't work that way, that's fine. No judgment. I have a friend who's a stand-up comedian who plots her routines on spreadsheets. I've already told you about my friend who's a novelist who teaches plotting via spreadsheets. But I also talked to a Broadway stage manager, and I talked to a CFO of a nonprofit school. I talked to the president of the United Way. So all different people, and it's not all, numbers geeks. It's I really think spreadsheets are excellent for words too. So we can't do question and answers, sadly, but I can say thank you. Here are all my different handles. I will send those out in the email. And I really appreciate you spending time with me. If you want to talk spreadsheets, I do consultations. I also do consultations on how to get published, like your first personal essay, because that's a whole world with lingo and jargon that not everyone understands. And I think that's everything. So thanks so much. I hope wherever you are, the air is clear and you are happy and healthy. And I do think spreadsheets can change lives and save the world. So get in touch with me to talk more about that. Thanks.